A millionaire finds an orphan clutching a dog in the rain. What the boy says leaves him stunned. Nathan Howell stood still, his silhouette framed by the enormous window overlooking the vast cityscape of Chicago. From up here, everything below seemed small, almost trivial. The lights below twinkled like faint stars, and the hum of traffic drifted softly upward as life carried on below, indifferent to his presence. His office sat on the top floor of one of the city's tallest skyscrapers, furnished with luxury, but feeling as empty as he did. He stared out at the bustling city, but his thoughts were far away, wandering as they often did to that day 3 years ago. The memory played out the same each time, his wife Anna and their son Keith laughing together in the car. It was seared into his mind with cruel clarity, each detail sharp and painful. Then came the sound of screeching tires, the crash of glass, and then silence. Chicago, lively and in constant motion, now served only as the background to his sorrow. The city's muted hues seemed to reflect his inner emptiness, grey, cold, unending. 3 years had passed, but the ache remained unchanged. The buzz of his professional success filled the silence for those around him, but he knew the truth. The promotions, the business deals, the praise, they felt hollow. Lost in his own world, his gaze drifted to the dark clouds forming on the horizon. Rain was coming. Once, he would have welcomed the cleansing feeling of rain, seeing it as a symbol of renewal, a fresh start with every drop. But now it only reminded him of the permanence of his loss, the things that couldn't be washed away. The quiet vibration of his phone on the desk jolted him back. He didn't have to look to know it was another call about work. Just another reminder of how detached he'd become from everything around him. Without a second thought, he silenced it. Outside, the world seemed to beckon him, almost calling him out of his solitude. For months now, he'd kept these moments at bay, shutting himself away in his office or drowning in work to numb the pain. But today felt different. Today, the pull was stronger. Nathan ran his fingers through his hair, noticing streaks of grey that hadn't been there before the accident. At only 45, grief had worn him down in ways no one else could see. To his colleagues, he was still the composed, confident leader who made decisions effortlessly and commanded respect in every room he entered. Inside, Nathan felt hollow, like a ghost of his former self, existing without a purpose he could no longer identify. Turning away from the window, his gaze swept over his office. The towering ceilings, the rich leather chairs, the gleaming wood, it all felt strangely disconnected from him now. What once symbolized years of hard-earned success now seemed more like a tomb, trapping him with memories that felt heavier with each passing day. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, but Nathan hardly noticed. Each drop seemed to erode the numbness he had wrapped around himself, peeling back layers of his detachment. There was no sudden realization, no profound awakening, just a quiet recognition that he was still here, still moving, and perhaps even capable of feeling something once again. The rain poured down, turning Chicago's streets into slick mirrors, while his footsteps matched the faint hum of the city. The sounds barely registered in his mind. He didn't feel the cold settling into his bones, nor the dampness soaking his clothes. His numbness had become a familiar part of him, as close as his own skin. Memories of the accident, Anna's laughter in the car, Keith's small hand in his, had taken everything from him, and the ache had only grown over time. Every street corner was steeped in memories, yet tonight, under the heavy rain, they blurred into a grey haze. As he walked past a row of closed shops, something unusual caught his eye. A small figure tucked under a sagging piece of cardboard. At first, He thought it might just be debris left to wither in the rain. But then the shape stirred. A boy. Nathan stopped. He looked closer and realized it was a child, huddled up and shivering. A dog lay next to him, its head resting on the boy's knee, fur drenched and tangled. The boy couldn't have been older than 8 or 9, with thin arms wrapped tightly around his knees as if he were trying to disappear into himself. For a long moment, Nathan stood, rooted to the spot. The rain poured on, steady and unyielding, but the sight of the boy sliced through the fog Nathan had carried for years. The child didn't look up. Nathan hadn't noticed the boy at first, his own thoughts too preoccupied to see him standing there, still as a statue. The atmosphere felt fragile, like one wrong move could shatter it. But something shifted within Nathan, urging him to do something. He crouched down to meet the boy's gaze, speaking just above a whisper, letting his voice blend with the rain. "Hey," he murmured softly. "You okay?" The boy flinched, staying silent but hugging his knees tighter, casting wary glances toward him. A dog beside the boy, alert but calm, didn't bark or growl. It only lifted its head, watching Nathan with tired eyes. "Is this your dog?" Nathan asked, nodding at the animal. The boy gave a small nod, barely moving his chin. "Rex," he whispered. Nathan looked at Rex, who lightly tapped his tail against the wet ground in acknowledgement, and Nathan exhaled slowly. This situation was far beyond his comfort zone. He barely knew how to handle his own issues, let alone approach this frightened kid. "You can't stay here," he said gently. "It's too cold, and the rain's not letting up." The boy's eyes darted between Rex and a cardboard box nearby, as if he were weighing his options. Seeing the fear and uncertainty etched on the boy's face, Nathan spoke again, his voice steady but soft. "I've got a warm place. You and Rex can come with me. You'll be safe." The boy looked up at him, his wide eyes showing a faint flicker of hope mixed with doubt. Nathan recognized that look. It was one he often saw in his own reflection, a look that came from losing more than anyone should have to. Rising slowly, Nathan extended his hand to the boy, careful not to rush or push him. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Sean," the boy whispered, his voice barely carrying above the rain. Nathan nodded. "Sean, I'm Nathan. You're safe with me, I promise." For a moment, Sean didn't move, his eyes shifting from Nathan's hand to Rex, who had now stood by his side. After a long pause, Sean reached out and took Nathan's hand, his grip faint and his fingers ice cold. But it was a start. Nathan gave a light pull, helping Sean up, and though Sean stumbled, Rex pressed close, steadying him. They strolled together to Nathan's car parked just a block away. Rain still drizzled, but the car offered a warm, secure haven. As they rolled through the quiet, rain-soaked streets, Nathan occasionally glanced back at Sean, who was bundled up in the back seat, his dog Rex snug beside him. The boy's eyelids were drooping, fatigue settling in as the tension from earlier eased. Nathan focused on the road, but his thoughts were racing. Who was this boy, really? How long had he been out there, braving the storm, alone? The soft chime of a doorbell echoed as Nathan Howell stepped into the gentle glow of the cafe. The familiar aroma of fresh coffee filled the air, immediately calming him. It was late afternoon, and the rain had finally passed, leaving the streets shining under the fading daylight. Nathan glanced around the cozy space, scanning for his friend. "Nathan!" a voice called out from behind the counter. Ethan Thomas, the cafe's owner and Nathan's oldest friend, gave a welcoming wave and a smile. The cafe was peaceful, a few regulars scattered around, engrossed in their books or laptops. Sean stood close to Nathan, clinging to his damp sleeve, while Rex sat loyally at his feet, watching everything with interest. "Ethan, I appreciate you letting us come by, Nathan said, walking up to the counter. We needed a quiet spot. Ethan dried his hands on a towel and leaned in for a quick hug. You know this place is always open for you, he replied, his eyes shifting to Sean with a soft, curious compassion. And this must be Sean. Nathan nodded, looking down at the boy. Yeah, Sean. This is my friend, Ethan, who owns this cafe. Sean, who'd been silent since the drive, glanced up and gave a small nod, his eyes big and wary, like he was still deciding if this was a safe place. Sensing the boy's unease from his long isolated days, Nathan tried to reassure him. Sit wherever you're comfortable, Ethan said warmly, aiming to make Sean feel welcome. I'll bring over some hot chocolate. Sean paused, then followed Nathan to a table by the window, where they settled in, the soft daylight casting gentle shadows across the wooden table. Rex nestled beside Sean, resting his head on the boy's lap in a quiet show of companionship. There was a lull, a brief moment of silence between them, with only the soft clinking of cups and the low hum of voices filling the space around them. Nathan's gaze lingered on Sean for a bit. This kid was so small, so delicate, and there was an unmistakable weight on his shoulders. Nathan felt a pang in his chest, wondering what had brought him here. Who was Sean? How long had he been on his own? And why did he stir such deep empathy in him? Just then, Ethan arrived with a steaming cup of hot chocolate, placing it in front of Sean, adding a few marshmallows on the side. On the house, kid, he said, grinning before heading back to the counter. Sean mumbled a soft, "Thank you," and wrapped his hands around the cup, letting the warmth spread through his fingers. Nathan took a sip of his own coffee, his eyes still resting on Sean. The boy was an enigma, a quiet mystery that tugged at Nathan's curiosity and compassion. After a few moments, Nathan cleared his throat. "Sean," he began, his voice soft, "I know you've been through a lot. I don't want to pressure you. But if you're comfortable, I'd like to know more about where you came from. I just want to help." Sean kept his gaze on the cup, his fingers slowly tracing its rim as he seemed to gather his thoughts. The silence stretched out, and Nathan worried he might have gone too far. But then, in a voice that was little more than a whisper, Sean spoke. "I don't remember everything," Sean began, choosing his words with care. "There was an accident, I think. A car accident. I was really young." Nathan's heart skipped a beat. He leaned in, trying to keep his tone steady. "An accident? What do you remember about it?" Sean's brow furrowed, his small face filled with concentration. "It was dark. There was a lot of noise and fire. I remember the fire." His grip on the cup tightened slightly. "After that, I was taken somewhere. It wasn't a good place." Nathan's throat tightened, feeling a pang of concern. "What kind of place?" Sean's voice was soft, barely audible. "The orphanage," he said. They didn't call me by my name there. I was just a number. They called me number 08. The words hung heavily in the air, and Nathan felt a shiver pass through him. A number. The boy wasn't lying. That was obvious. The idea that a child could be stripped of their identity, reduced to just a number, stirred something fierce within Nathan. "Number 8, he repeated under his breath, struggling to mask the frustration seeping into his tone. "Did they really call all of you that?" Sean nodded, his gaze fixed on his cup. "We were only numbers, no names." The image felt like something out of a nightmare, yet Nathan's mind was already churning, connecting the dots. The fire, the accident. The parallels were eerie. It echoed his own tragedy too closely. How was that even possible? He'd lost everything that night. The accident that took his wife, his son Keith. And here sat this boy, quiet and battered, with a story that struck far too close to Nathan's own grief. His pulse quickened, memories rushing back. Those flashes of that awful night. The flames, the shattered glass, the raw feeling of helplessness as his world fell apart. Nathan looked at Sean, really looked at him, and for the first time noticed something he had missed before. There was something familiar in Sean's posture, in the quiet resilience in his eyes. Could it be Sean? Nathan murmured, his voice thick, trying to hold back the rush of emotion. Did anyone ever tell you anything? Did they say anything about who you really are? Sean shook his head. No. I don't know. Nathan glanced at the clock as he pulled into his driveway, the engine's hum fading as he switched it off. The house in front of him, usually quiet and empty, seemed even more silent tonight. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets wet and the air crisp. He'd left Sean with Ethan at the cafe, thinking the boy could use a warm place to rest. Ethan, always dependable, had offered to help without a second thought, yet Nathan couldn't shake the weight bearing down on him, or the persistent questions that had surfaced since meeting Sean. As he stepped into the house, the familiar emptiness wrapped around him. He took off his coat, exhaling a long sigh, his thoughts drifting back to the orphanage Sean had talked about. Number 8. The idea of a child being treated that way, having their identity stripped, made anger bubble up within him in a way he hadn't expected. Something in Sean's story just didn't sit right with him, and the more he dwelled on it, the more it gnawed at him. Nathan settled into his chair at the desk, flipping open his laptop. The glow from the screen cast a soft light around the room as he began typing, searching for information on local orphanages. He keyed in Maplewood Children's Home and pressed enter. A few articles appeared right away, but they were mostly old news, updates on donations, volunteer work, and other community-focused pieces that gave him no real insights. Frustration started to build as he clicked through, hoping for any hint that might explain the odd events surrounding Sean. He leaned back, rubbing his face, realizing he needed more than basic internet searches. He needed someone who could dig a little deeper. A familiar name flashed through his mind. Jack Carter. They hadn't spoken recently, but Jack had always come through in the past. As someone still in law enforcement, Jack had connections Nathan now felt he desperately needed. Without another thought, Nathan picked up his phone, scrolling until he found Jack's contact. It had been a while since they last connected, but this call couldn't wait. The phone rang a few times, and then a familiar, rugged voice answered on the other end. "Nathan Howell," Jack said, with a trace of surprise. "Long time no see. What's going on?" "Hey, Jack," Nathan greeted, his voice sounding more weary than he intended. "Yeah, it's been a while. I need a favor." There was a pause, a brief silence filled with unasked questions. "All right," Jack finally responded. "What's up?" Nathan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. He didn't want to sound too paranoid. "It's about an orphanage. I met a kid, been through some tough stuff, and there's something off about his background. He mentioned a place called Maplewood Children's Home, and I think there's more to the story." Jack made a low, considering noise. "Maplewood, huh? I've heard of it. Haven't looked into it personally, but I know people who might have. What exactly are you hoping to find?" Nathan exhaled, pressing his fingers to his temples. "Anything." Nathan felt an uneasiness he couldn't ignore. The kid mentioned they referred to him by a number instead of his name. That's got to be strange, right? "No, that's definitely not normal," Jack replied, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "All right. I'll ask around and see if anyone knows more about this place, but Nathan, are you sure you're ready to dig into this? Sometimes these things go deeper than you'd think. I'm sure, Nathan replied, though his stomach tightened. I can't just let it go. Not after everything this kid's endured. Jack paused, considering Nathan's resolve, before he spoke again. Okay, I'll reach out to some people. It could take a couple of days, but I'll get back to you as soon as I have something. Thanks, Jack, Nathan said, feeling a slight sense of relief. I owe you one. You owe me a few, Jack joked. But don't sweat it. I'll be in touch. The call ended, leaving Nathan alone with the quiet hum of his home. He leaned back, staring at the screen, thoughts racing. Sean's past was weighing on him, a haunting mystery that felt bigger than just a troubled kid with a hard story. Nathan stood, moving over to the window to look out at the darkened street. The rain had stopped, but heavy clouds still hung low in the sky. He thought of Sean, back at Ethan's cafe, curled up with Rex, searching for peace in a world that had been anything but kind. This wasn't just idle curiosity. It was about giving Sean a real shot at a future, something Nathan knew could vanish in an instant. As hours slipped by, the feeling that Sean's story was only the beginning intensified. Whatever answers he uncovered, he knew they would pull him down a path he hadn't anticipated. The quiet returned to his house, yet the unease settled deep within him, like the storm clouds still lingering over the city. A few days later, Jack called back, suggesting they go together. The drive to Maplewood Children's Home carried a thick tension neither of them spoke of. Nathan's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white as they navigated the narrow streets of Philadelphia. Beside him, Jack silently scanned the rundown buildings they passed. They hadn't spoken much since leaving Chicago, but the gravity of their mission was undeniable. Nathan's mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. As they finally reached their destination, the orphanage looked even more run-down than Nathan had pictured. The structure was aging, with bricks flaking away along the edges, and the windows were thick with dirt and dust. It stood there like an artifact left behind, in a neighborhood that had long since given up. A faded sign reading Maplewood Children's Home hung askew above the entrance. Nathan turned off the engine, his eyes fixed on the dilapidated building. This place looks abandoned. Jack nodded, his expression tense. It might as well be. They stepped out of the car and made their way toward the entrance. The wind stung their faces, carrying a faint sound of children laughing. But the laughter was hollow, as if forced. Nathan's stomach tightened. This was not a place fit for any child. Inside, the orphanage reeked of dampness and neglect. Peeling paint lined the walls, and the air felt thick, almost suffocating. A single receptionist sat at a desk down the hall, her attention focused on paperwork in front of her. She barely looked up as they approached. "We're here to see Linda Collins," Jack said, showing his badge. The woman's eyes flicked briefly to the badge, then to Nathan, before she finally stood up. "I'll get her." They waited in silence, Nathan's gaze drifting to a small group of children in the corner. They were tiny, their clothes hanging loose over thin bodies, with faces that seemed drained of color. One child, maybe around 7, locked eyes with Nathan, his stare wide and hollow. It was a look that struck Nathan deeply, a look filled with too many nights of hunger, too many broken promises. Jack leaned in close, his voice a low murmur. "They look sick." Nathan nodded, unable to pull his eyes from the boy. "Worse than sick. They look forgotten." Moments later, a woman appeared from a hallway in the back, Linda Collins. Her smile was tight, her eyes sharp and observant. She was well dressed, but there was a chilliness to her, something that made Nathan's skin prickle the instant she entered the room. "Detective Carter," she greeted Jack with a curt nod, And you must be Mr. Howell. What brings you to Maplewood today? Nathan could sense the tension building, his gut telling him something was very wrong. He let Jack take the lead for now. We're here following up on some reports, Jack began. There's been some talk about the conditions around here. I assume you've caught wind of it, right? Linda kept her smile, though her eyes grew sharper. Maplewood is a state-run facility, Detective. We comply with every regulation. But rumors are hard to ignore, Jack added, leaning in. Talk about illegal adoptions, improper handling of records. We need access to those files. Susan's smile faltered for a brief second. Those are serious allegations, Detective. Everything we do here is by the book. But if you're insisting on a review, I'll have to check with my superiors. Nathan observed her closely, noticing the slight twitch of her fingers and the fleeting look of discomfort in her eyes. She wasn't telling the truth. He could feel it. I'd like to see the children's living quarters, Nathan said, his tone unwavering. Linda hesitated before motioning toward the hallway. Very well, Mr. Howell, but you may find it all quite familiar. Our budget is limited. They walked through dimly lit hallways, and with every step, the discomfort grew. The rooms were small and crowded, with bunk beds lining the walls and thin blankets covering narrow mattresses. No place for a child to grow up, Nathan observed, scanning the rooms. Linda stopped abruptly, turning to face him. Her smile had vanished, replaced with a hard, guarded look. Mr. Howell, she said, voice low, you strike me as someone who knows when to stop digging. Take that to heart. The warning was unmistakable, cold, and threatening. Nathan didn't flinch, holding her gaze. I won't, he replied, his tone calm but resolute. Linda narrowed her eyes but said nothing further. She turned and continued down the hallway, her heels echoing against the floor. Nathan and Jack followed, but the heavy sense of dread only deepened. As they stepped outside, the sun was dipping below the horizon, stretching shadows over the building. Nathan cast a glance back at the kids, still playing in the courtyard, their laughter faint, almost haunting. Something's not right, Nathan muttered to Jack as they got into the car. Jack nodded, face tense. I know, but we'll find out the truth. And Nathan knew they had to keep going. Whatever was happening behind those walls wasn't anywhere near finished. The Westwood house had always felt too large. Since Anna and Keith were gone, the vast empty halls seemed to echo a silence Nathan couldn't quite shake. But tonight, something was different. The once cold and vacant spaces now held a gentle hum, like life had seeped back in. The low crackle of the fire, the soft breathing of a boy fast asleep on the couch, and the gentle padding of Rex's paws as he circled protectively around Sean's feet, brought a warmth to the room. Standing quietly in the doorway, Nathan watched Sean as he slept, curled into the cushions. His face looked peaceful in a way it hadn't since his arrival. Nearby, Rex rested, one eye half open, as if he wouldn't leave Sean's side, even in slumber. Nathan let out a quiet sigh. The boy was beginning to feel like he belonged, like he was more than just a visitor. Nathan couldn't pinpoint when it had started, but there was a steady, growing bond between them now. Sean was no longer just the fearful, distant child who had shown up, drenched from the rain that first night. He was something more, and as time passed, Nathan found himself pulled into the mystery of Sean's past and the strange, haunting familiarity that lingered in his thoughts. Crossing the room, Nathan took a seat in the armchair across from Sean, making sure not to wake him. His eyes lingered on the boy's face, his slightly furrowed brow, hands clutching the edge of the blanket. There was something about him, the line of his jaw, the way his hair fell over his forehead, that struck a chord within Nathan. It wasn't only the resemblance, it was the way Sean looked at him sometimes, a quiet trust that had somehow formed, despite everything he must have endured. Nathan didn't need to ask to know Sean had been through too much, seen too much for someone so young. Leaning forward, Nathan rested his elbows on his knees. "Sean," he whispered, not loud enough to wake him, but just enough to let the name fill the room's stillness. Rex seemed to sense it, shifting slightly to nudge Sean's hand with his nose. Sean stirred, blinking open his eyes slowly. For a brief moment, confusion crossed his face. Then he recognized Nathan and relaxed. "Hey," Nathan said softly. "You all right?" Sean nodded, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. "Yeah, just a dream." Nathan paused before speaking again, his tone soft and careful. "Do you remember what it was about?" he asked. Sean's eyes dropped, his hand moving unconsciously over Max's fur. "It was the accident," he murmured. "I saw it, like I always do." A chill ran through Nathan. He had been waiting for this moment, hoping Sean would finally share the thing they had both been avoiding. "The accident. Do you want to talk about it?" Nathan's voice was gentle. Sean looked up, searching Nathan's face, perhaps for comfort, perhaps for assurance. Slowly, he nodded. "I don't remember all of it," Sean began, his voice steady but low. "But I remember the car. It was raining, and everything happened so fast. I heard the crash, and then I was just alone." Nathan felt a pang in his chest. He didn't push Sean to say more, letting him speak what was in his heart. "I don't know how I got out," Sean continued, his voice now barely a whisper. "But when I woke up, I wasn't with them anymore. I was somewhere else." Nathan felt the ache of unspoken words, the gaps left in the story. Yet he didn't need to know every detail to understand the boy's pain. He had endured his own losses and saw that same pain mirrored in Sean's eyes. "You're safe here, Sean," Nathan said after a long pause. "Whatever happened, whatever you've been through, I'll uncover the truth." Sean looked up, his eyes finally showing a glimmer of something like hope. It was faint, delicate, but it was there. "Promise?" Sean whispered. Nathan leaned forward, his voice firm and steady. "I promise. I'll keep you safe, and we'll face this together." As Sean settled back into the cushions, with Rex curled up beside him, Nathan felt a calm determination rise within him. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Nathan Howell's study, its warm light unable to dispel the chill he felt deep inside. A stack of documents, freshly delivered by Jack Carter, sat on his desk, holding secrets that had remained hidden for too long. As Nathan sat down, his hands shook slightly, but he forced himself to focus, to read, and to finally understand the truth about the boy who had unexpectedly entered his life. Jack had cautioned Nathan that what he was about to read wouldn't be easy, but nothing could have fully braced him for the discovery waiting on those pages. At first, it seemed standard, just basic notes about the orphanage and uneventful inspection reports. But then, as he flipped through, the tone shifted, and a chill ran through him. He reached a document titled Maplewood Investigative Report, filled with allegations of shady adoptions and hidden dealings connected to the orphanage. Records indicated children had been shuffled in and out quietly, their names stripped away and replaced with numbers. Nathan's gaze narrowed as he read deeper. The evidence of someone's involvement in these illicit activities grew clearer, but it was the mention of a specific child that made Nathan freeze. Number 08. The file described a young boy who had survived a tragic accident, disturbingly similar to the one that had taken his wife and son. The details were murky, likely intentionally so, but they mentioned a dark-haired boy, around 4 years old, with no known relatives, details that struck a nerve in Nathan. He stared at the page, piecing together the puzzle. Could this be mere chance? He wanted to think so, but each sentence amplified his suspicions. This boy had been sent to Maplewood, stripped of any identity, labeled simply as Number U8. No follow-up on the boy's fate was noted, only hints of something ominous, sending chills down Nathan's spine. Sean had mentioned receiving a call from a number, but Nathan had dismissed it as one of the cruel peculiarities of the orphanage. Now, that number held a terrifying weight. The words blurred as Nathan's mind raced, grasping at the threads of connection. Could Sean possibly be? He forced himself to pause, to not let assumptions cloud his mind. But the clues were stacking up, undeniable and chilling. His heart pounded, breath quickening as he dug through the remaining documents, desperate for anything to confirm or refute his fears. Finally, he found it. A single, weathered police report on the accident that had shattered his life. It mentioned a young boy survivor, though details were obscured. The orphanage name was redacted, but Nathan knew all too well what it meant. Everything led back to Maplewood. Nathan's heart raced as the puzzle pieces started to fall into place. The boy who had made it. The boy taken in by the orphanage. Could it possibly be Sean? Could it be his son, Keith, whom he thought he'd lost forever? His hands shook as he grabbed the phone, dialing Jack with an urgency he hadn't felt in years. The line rang twice before Jack answered, his voice calm, almost as if he had been waiting for this call. Jack. Nathan's voice was tight, barely under control. I came across something I can't just let go. There's a file, a report, about a boy, a survivor from that accident. It lines up too closely with Sean's story. There was a heavy pause on the other end, as if Jack was weighing his words. I was afraid you'd come across this, Jack finally said, his tone serious. I didn't want to mention anything until you were ready, but it seems like things are lining up. Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. Are you saying... Do you think Sean could really be... I can't say for sure, Jack admitted carefully. But here's what I know. Maplewood has been under investigation for a long time, and we've barely scratched the surface. If there's even a chance that Sean's connected to your past, we have to pursue it. I've already started digging, but it's going to take time, and Linda Collins won't hand over anything willingly. Nathan's thoughts spun as he tried to process everything, the spark of hope clashing with waves of doubt and fear. I can't just sit and wait, Jack, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I need answers. I understand, Jack replied, but you need to tread carefully. If Sean is who you think he might be, some people won't want this to come out. We have to do this by the book, or it could all fall apart. Nathan nodded, even though Jack couldn't see him. I'm going to confront Susan, he said, his voice now steady. She has to answer if she's involved. Be careful, Nathan, Jack cautioned. Linda wasn't the type you'd approach unprepared. I'll stand by you as best I can, but don't push too hard, Nathan warned before hanging up, feeling a new resolve harden within him. He couldn't back off now, not with the truth, just within his reach. Nathan Howell gripped the steering wheel tightly as he sat outside the orphanage. The building stood silent and weary in front of him, its crumbling exterior hiding secrets he was determined to uncover. The early morning sun barely touched the street, casting long shadows that stretched across the pavement. Daylight wouldn't be necessary for what he was about to do. He'd waited too long already. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out of the car, the crisp morning air biting at his skin. Each step toward the entrance weighed heavily, the responsibility of what he knew pressing on him. He didn't have a prepared speech, but one thing was clear. He wasn't leaving without answers. The door creaked as he pushed it open, and the familiar musty odor of the orphanage greeted him. It was eerily quiet, as if the building itself sensed the gravity of the moment. He walked down the dimly lit hallway, the sound of his footsteps amplifying as he neared Susan's office. Skipping any courtesy, he walked in without knocking. Linda looked up, startled at his sudden entry, but quickly masked it with a hint of irritation. Despite her calm front, Nathan caught a fleeting trace of apprehension in her expression. She knew this was coming, or at least had expected it eventually. "Nathan," she said, her voice cool as she set her pen aside. "I didn't know we had a meeting on the agenda." "We don't," Nathan responded, his voice firm but controlled. He shut the door behind him, stepping closer to her desk. "But we need to have a conversation, now." Linda leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "I'm not sure what you think you're doing, barging in here unannounced. If you've got something to say, get on with it." Nathan clenched his jaw, fighting to keep his anger in check. He'd pictured this moment countless times, but now that it was here, the words felt tangled up in his mind. He steadied himself, his voice unwavering. "I know about the illegal adoptions," he said deliberately, his eyes locked on hers. "I know exactly what you've been doing here. The kids, Sean, they weren't just orphans, were they? They were treated like assets." Susan's gaze hardened, but she didn't refute his words. Instead, she leaned in closer, her voice cutting. "You don't understand the circumstances, Nathan. You think it's just about a handful of kids who slipped through the cracks? It's far more complex than that." "Don't talk down to me," Nathan retorted, barely containing his frustration. "I've seen the documents, Susan. I know about number 8. I know what happened to him and to all the others. How can you defend it? How can you look yourself in the mirror?" Linda hesitated, her hands gripping the edge of the desk. Nathan thought, for a moment, she might finally give him the answer he was searching for. But then her expression shifted, fear flashing in her eyes. "There's someone. They call him," she whispered, her voice wavering. "He's the one overseeing it all, the trafficking, the adoptions, everything." "But you can't go up against him, Nathan. You won't win." "Who is he?" Nathan pressed, desperation lacing his words. "If you know who he is, Susan, you have to tell me." But Linda only shook her head, her eyes distant. "It's too late." It was already too late for all of them. Just as Nathan moved, she reached into her desk drawer, pulling out a small bottle of pills. His pulse quickened as he realized what she intended. "Susan, don't," he started to say, but she was already twisting off the cap. She looked up at him with a calm, almost resigned expression, as though she'd already made her peace. "I'm sorry, Nathan, but this is the only way out." Nathan lunged forward, desperate to stop her, but she was quicker. In one swift move, she swallowed the pills, her hand shaking as she let the empty bottle fall onto the desk. Gripping her shoulders, he tried to shake her back to reality, but her eyes were glazing over, her body weakening in his arms. No, Nathan muttered, panic flooding him. He lowered her carefully to the floor, fumbling for his phone to call for help. Yet a sinking feeling told him it was too late. She had made her choice. As Susan's breathing grew faint, Nathan knelt beside her, helplessly watching the light fade from her eyes. Her last words echoed hauntingly in his mind, her name lingering in the air like a dark shadow over everything he'd uncovered. He stayed with her until the paramedics arrived, but by then, it was over. Linda Collins was gone, carrying her secrets with her. Standing outside the orphanage, Nathan stared into the distance, burdened with more questions than answers. The truth was out there, just beyond his grasp, and now he knew he couldn't rest until he uncovered it. But for now, all he could do was wait. Wait, and prepare himself for the battle ahead. The shadows around him had deepened, and his fight was far from over. Nathan Howell sat across from Jack Carter in a dim, worn-out diner. The smell of coffee and fried food hung in the air, but neither man seemed to notice. Their attention was fixed on the document laid out before them, a tangled map of names, dates, and connections that hinted at a vast network of corruption. Jack tapped his pen on the table, brows knit in thought. "So, M is Thomas Blackwell," he said, breaking the silence. "It all lines up. Blackwell has managed to stay hidden for years, just out of reach. But this could be his downfall." Nathan glanced down, his focus locked on a photo of Blackwell, an older man with slicked back hair, dressed in a sharp suit, his smile barely touching his eyes. Blackwell embodied everything Nathan despised, a man who wielded wealth and influence as tools to manipulate and destroy, leaving nothing but chaos in his wake. The idea that Sean might just be another pawn in Blackwell's twisted game made Nathan's blood boil. "We need to tread carefully," Jack warned, his voice dropping. "Blackwell is dangerous, and he's got people around him who would do anything to keep him safe. We can't afford any slip-ups." Nathan's jaw clenched as he studied the man in the photo. "I don't intend to slip up. This ends here." Jack nodded, hearing the resolve in Nathan's voice. "There's an event tonight, a high society thing Blackwell is hosting. It's a good chance to get close to him, but it's risky. Are you sure about this?" Nathan didn't waver. "I'll do whatever it takes to bring him down. I owe it to Sean and every other kid he's hurt." For the next hour, they meticulously went over the plan, covering every possible angle. Jack had managed to get an invitation in a fake name, giving Nathan the access he needed. The objective was straightforward: get inside without drawing suspicion. But they both knew that things rarely went as smoothly as planned. When night fell, Nathan found himself at the grand entrance of Blackwell's estate, the sprawling mansion glowing warmly under soft lights. The event was in full swing, luxury cars gliding up to drop off guests dressed to the nines. Nathan adjusted his suit collar, his pulse a blend of anticipation and unease. He was walking straight into the lion's den, and there'd be no margin for error. He handed his forged invitation to the doorman, who barely glanced at it before nodding him in. Inside, the mansion was even grander than he'd expected: crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and art that oozed money and status. The air was thick with classical music, the soft clinking of glasses, and the murmur of high society chatter. But Nathan hadn't come to admire the opulence. He moved through the crowd, scanning the room for Blackwell. He spotted him quickly enough, a tall figure by the fireplace, surrounded by people laughing at his every word. Blackwell looked every bit the untouchable mogul, exuding charm and arrogance in equal measure. Nathan saw through the smooth exterior, recognizing the predator lurking beneath Blackwell's polished charm. He approached the group with caution, keeping his expression neutral as he edged closer. Bits and pieces of Blackwell's conversation drifted over, talk about investments, political sway, and high society matters, though nothing hinting at his darker dealings. As Nathan joined, Blackwell's gaze briefly landed on him, sharp and appraising. "I don't believe we've met," Blackwell remarked, his tone as smooth as his demeanor. "Thomas Blackwell." Nathan extended his hand. "I've heard a bit about you, Mr. Blackwell." Blackwell smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "All good, I hope." Nathan returned the smile, though it felt hollow. "Depends on who you ask." A glimmer of calculation appeared in Blackwell's eyes, vanishing almost as quickly as it had come. "Well, it's always a pleasure to meet new faces. What line of work are you in?" Nathan replied effortlessly, sticking to the cover he and Jack had agreed upon. "Investment consulting," he said. "I've been expanding my network and heard this was the place to be." Blackwell chuckled, arrogance dripping from his voice. "Whoever told you that wasn't wrong?" Nathan kept the conversation flowing, carefully probing for any sign of Blackwell letting his guard down. But Blackwell was too seasoned, too controlled. It was clear getting him to slip in a public setting would be unlikely. While the exchange continued, Nathan's gaze discreetly roamed the room, noting the layout. Off to the side, he noticed a hallway leading away from the main gathering, lightly guarded. That was his destination. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, slipping away from the group as casually as possible. Blackwell barely seemed to notice, already absorbed in another conversation. Nathan moved swiftly, keeping a low profile as he approached the hallway. The guard at the entrance gave him a quick once-over, but didn't stop him, allowing him to slip through as the sounds of the party faded behind him. The hallway led to Blackwell's private study, a room rumored to contain the documents he sought. Nathan reached the door, unsurprised to find it locked. Calmly, he pulled out a small toolkit, his hands steady as he worked on the lock. Within moments, it clicked open, and he slid inside. The study was dark, lit faintly by the glow of streetlights outside. He moved quickly, scanning the room for anything that might hold the evidence he needed. It wasn't long before he found the safe, a sleek, modern design concealed behind a bookshelf. He worked fast, his fingers moving with a practiced ease as he cracked open the safe. The door swung wide, revealing a neat stack of files and a small flash drive. Nathan scooped them both up, his pulse racing as he tucked them into his jacket. Just as he turned to make his exit, he heard footsteps in the hall, making him freeze. He pressed himself against the wall, holding his breath as the steps slowed just outside. For a tense second, he thought he was done for. But then, the footsteps faded down the hall. He exhaled slowly, waiting until he was sure the coast was clear, then slipped out of the study and back into the hall. Moving swiftly, he retraced his steps until he was back at the party, blending seamlessly into the crowd, as if nothing had happened. He knew he couldn't linger. With the evidence safely stashed, he made his way toward the exit, his heart pounding harder with every step. The air outside was crisp and cool, a sharp contrast to the tension still clinging to him. As he walked away from the mansion, the files and flash drive secure in his jacket, he allowed himself a tiny sigh of relief. He finally had the proof he needed to take Blackwell down, to dismantle the entire operation. But he knew this was just the beginning. The real battle lay ahead, and there was no turning back now. The night was calm, yet the air was thick with the anticipation of what was to come. Nathan Howell stood in the shadows outside the warehouse, heart pounding in his chest. The cold grip of the pistol in his hand felt unfamiliar, but he held on tight, knowing this was the final step in his mission. Everything, every betrayal, every truth he'd uncovered had led to this. It was time to end it. Beside him, Jack Carter kept his gaze locked on the building. The place was eerily silent, a stark change from the chaos they'd been caught up in for weeks. Their plan was straightforward, but risky. They had enough evidence to bring Thomas Blackwell down and dismantle the trafficking ring once and for all. But Nathan knew Blackwell wouldn't go quietly. "You ready?" Jack asked, his voice low, calm. Nathan gave a firm nod, jaw set. "Let's get it done." They moved quietly toward the entrance, the faint sound of police sirens in the distance hinting that backup was close. But Nathan had no intention of waiting. This was personal. The door groaned as they nudged it open, revealing the dim, shadow-filled expanse of the warehouse. Stacks of crates lined the walls, creating a labyrinth of dark passageways, an ideal setting for a final standoff. Nathan's heartbeat raced as he moved through the cramped aisles, every sense on high alert. The weight of what lay ahead pressed on him, but he forced it aside, zeroing in on the mission. As they turned a corner, Thomas Blackwell, came into sight. Standing in the center with two men by his side, Blackwell appeared relaxed, almost casual. But Nathan could see the sharpness in his gaze, the shrewd mind hidden beneath the calm demeanor. "So you finally made it," Blackwell sneered, his voice tinged with a mocking edge. "I was starting to think you'd chickened out, Nathan." Nathan stepped forward, eyes locked on Blackwell. "This ends here, Blackwell. It's over." Blackwell let out a low, humorless laugh. "Over? You think you can just stroll in and take me down? You've got no clue what you're up against. I've been at this game long before you even knew the name M, and I'm not about to let it fall apart now." Jack's voice cut in, steady and unyielding. "We've got all we need to lock you up for good, Blackwell. The police are on their way. You've run out of exits." But Blackwell seemed unfazed. He tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk on his lips. "I think you're underestimating me, Jack. People like me don't get caught. We don't end up in prison. We just keep moving." Nathan's hand tightened around his pistol. "Enough. This is your last chance, Blackwell. Give up, and maybe the court will go easy on you. But I won't." For a moment, silence blanketed the room, thick with tension. Then Blackwell's smirk vanished, replaced by a glare as cold as ice. "Mercy," he hissed, disdain dripping from his words. "You think I need your mercy? You're just a desperate man clinging to a losing fight. And you're too late. Even if you take me down, others will follow. People far more powerful than you could ever imagine." But Nathan didn't flinch. He took another step forward, gun held firm. "You're wrong, Blackwell. It stops with you. Here and now." Blackwell's gaze held a flash of something that might have been fear, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. He gave a slight nod to one of his men, and in an instant, all hell broke loose. The man lunged toward Nathan, but Jack reacted first. A single gunshot echoed through the warehouse, and the attacker hit the floor, his weapon clattering beside him. Blackwell's other guard hesitated, then turned to flee, but Nathan was already in motion. He raised his gun, firing 2 precise shots, and the man collapsed in the doorway. But Blackwell didn't flee. He stood his ground, his face a blank mask as Nathan closed in. "It's over, Blackwell," Nathan said again, his voice low, laced with finality. Blackwell's sneer faltered, any pretense of bravado gone from his eyes. "You think this makes you a hero, Nathan? That taking me down changes anything?" Nathan offered no reply. He simply looked at the man who had caused so much anguish, so much devastation, and felt a steely resolve settle within him. This man, this villain, had stolen everything from him, his family, his peace, his faith in justice. Now, it was time to settle the score. As the distant sound of sirens grew closer, Blackwell made a last frantic move, reaching for a hidden weapon. But Nathan was ready. He fired, and the bullet struck Blackwell squarely in the chest. Blackwell staggered, shock crossing his face as he collapsed. The room fell silent, gunshots fading into the background. Nathan stood over Blackwell's fallen form, his heart pounding as the full weight of his actions started to settle in. Jack stepped beside him, a hand resting on Nathan's shoulder. "It's done, Nathan. You did it." But relief didn't come. Instead, Nathan felt only a hollow ache inside. Victory had come, but at a cost, one that felt far too steep. He holstered his weapon, turning away with his thoughts drifting to the one who mattered now. Sean. Keith. As the police poured into the warehouse, arresting Blackwell's men and securing the scene, Nathan walked into the cool night air. He looked up at the sky, the stars above seeming to shine a little brighter, and felt a slight release from the past's weight. He drove straight to Ethan's, where Keith, was waiting. The boy was asleep on the couch, Rex curled protectively at his feet. Nathan stood silently in the doorway, taking a long moment to look at him. The familiar face was unmistakable. Kneeling down, He gently brushed a strand of hair off his son's forehead. Keith shifted slightly, his eyes fluttering open, before recognition spread across his face, and a warm, hopeful smile appeared. There was a brief moment of confusion. "Dad," he whispered, his voice soft but filled with longing. Nathan felt his heart swell, though he kept his tone steady. "Yeah, it's me. I'm here, Keith." Keith reached out, and Nathan clasped his hand tightly. The boy's grip was strong and grounding, and for the first time in years, Nathan felt a quiet sense of peace. No more words were needed. Their troubled past was finally behind them, and now a future lay ahead, theirs to build together. As Nathan sat there, holding his son's hand, he silently promised himself something. No matter what, he would protect Keith and make sure no other child would suffer the way they had. It was a vow he fully intended to keep, whatever it took. A new dawn was breaking, ushering in a fresh start. Nathan knew the journey forward wouldn't be smooth, but for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to face it, ready to welcome the hope it held. And that's a story about a father's unwavering fight for justice and a son's long-awaited return. What an emotional journey, right? Stories like these remind us of human resilience, the power of love, and the lengths we'll go to protect those we care about. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Each week, we dive into narratives that touch our hearts, challenge our perspectives, and make us think just a bit differently about life and our role in it. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep chasing those impactful stories that bring meaning to life. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video